So if you didn't watch the first 5 parts, this is actually not the best place to start, but that's okay. I bought an old Honda CR-V and took a 10,000 mile solo road trip for 2 months. Starting from California, I drove east through Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and was about to enter Louisiana. In the last episode, I went to San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, and Houston, the 4 major cities in Texas, and had a great time with every one of them. And now you are pretty much up to date. In this episode, I will cover my adventures in Louisiana, including Cajun food, bayous, gators, swamps, and all that fun stuff. If you want to support this channel and future videos, you can subscribe, comment, or like, but no pressure. Before going there, everything I knew about Louisiana came from a movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Over the years, I had watched that movie for many times, and naturally, I fell in love with the Louisiana accent, the swamps, gigantic trees, and can't wait to be surrounded by them. Since I had made up my mind to spend 2 weeks in Louisiana, I didn't want to rush myself. When I was looking for rooms on Airbnb, I found several rooms with reasonable prices around a city called Lafayette. It was between Houston and New Orleans, which was perfect for me. The weather changed dramatically after leaving Texas. There were more rainy days than sunny days while I was in Louisiana. I spent 2 days in my first Airbnb until it was no longer available. The room was very cozy, and when it was raining outside, I would just stay home cooking, watching Netflix, and talking to a cat. By the way, she was a great listener and never talked back to me, not even once. When the sun was out, I went to a beautiful campus and found all of my stocks on this LCD panel. I actually didn't check the closing prices on that specific day, so I stood there for quite a while trying to find them all. Looking back, I have to say my stocks were really cheap back then compared to how much they're worth now. In less than 2 years, AMD went up 111%, Nvidia went up 160%, Tesla almost went up 500%, and I am very proud of them. In fact, University of Louisiana Lafayette had a very long history. I found generations of graduates that came from the same family on those tiles, and a lot of them had French last names. Also, the trees here were enormous, reminding me just how ancient the city was. A few days later, I checked into another Airbnb on the eastern side of the town. This place was even better than the last one. A friendly couple went out of their way to help me feel at home. The room was clean, conversation was great, and they had the biggest fridge I had ever seen. After knowing my wish to have authentic Cajun food and to go on a swamp tour, the landlady Monica wrote me a note on where to go to and where to eat. I really appreciated their help and spent nearly 5 days at their place. In those 5 days, I went to many places. I had my first and second and third Cajun food experience at a restaurant called Cajun Table. For those of you who are not familiar with the term Cajun food, here's a quick explanation. It originated with Acadian immigrants who ended up in the South after fleeing Canada in the 18th century, and it is known for its intense heartiness and spicy notes. A whole plate of crabs and shrimps costed about $22, and it was quite an experience eating it. The shrimps were juicy and tender, crabs were full of meat. It took me about 40 minutes of non-stop eating to finish the whole plate. And in the end, my mouth, my hands, and my face had Cajun spice all over, and I couldn't be happier. The next day I went there again, and the day after that. I tried fish, oyster, crayfish, and so many more, until I was certain that I would not forget the Cajun taste no matter what. Furthermore, I learned a new pickup line from a sign I saw in the restaurant. "Can I buy you a drink?" I also went to a couple of swamps nearby. Some of them were big, some were small, but before going into the subject, let me first talk about the amazing Louisiana people for a moment, who are in a different league when it comes to being welcoming. It was a gloomy day, and apparently I was the only tourist in Lake Martin. It wasn't a very big swamp, but I did manage to see a few gators along the way. And while I was there, every car I saw stopped when they were next to me. And the drivers would ask me if I needed some help or did I need a ride to the parking lot. Of course, I didn't need any help, but I was deeply impressed by their kindness to a stranger. In big cities like LA or New York, I wasn't treated like this. The swamp tour I took was called McGee's Swamp Tours. It was about half an hour drive from Lafayette, and the 90 minutes boat tour costed $30. The tour guide was a great storyteller. He told us the history of Louisiana, history of those floating houses, fun facts about the birds we saw along the way, and he even had a gator friend in the swamp. After he called the gator's name, it really came to us. That was the first time I was this close to an alligator. I enjoyed the tour immensely. So if you are in that region and want to know what a swamp looks like, come to MacG Swamp Tours. They do a great job. Also, I loved flying my drone in this area. It was just so perfect.
Fly me to the sky, above the clouds where all the stars are circling around with you. Take me to the ground and get me a pair of red roses in the garden with a full of blooming flowers. The earth and a joy to see you, a lovely boy, but all I will feel is the blue. All I could think of is you. Then I'd wear the stories from head to head. I've missed you.
I spent my last day in Lafayette walking around the neighborhood. I did some exercise around the fish pond, enjoying the humidity and the sunshine. Everything here was in different shades of green. The farmland, the trees, the lakes, the grass, the mangroves. When I get really old, I'd like to move here and look at them every single day. I said goodbye to Lafayette. It was difficult, but my trip had to go on. I want to stop this part of the story here because I just realized there's actually a lot going on while I was in New Orleans, and I simply couldn't squeeze all that into this episode. So the next one will cover the rest of my adventures in Louisiana, and hopefully we can get to Alabama. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to support this channel, subscribe, comment, and like would be very helpful. If you have any questions, you can either leave a comment or hit me up on my Instagram at Jingwu Show. The next part will be out as soon as possible. Bye.